Hello writers, come write with me. My name is Mykela Greenwood. I create worlds for mind adventures. Welcome to my YouTube channel, Write with Mykela. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell so you can go on this journey with me. Today is Friday, which is story time, or the day of our chapter exchange. Your work will be extra videos, but everything else will be the same for my viewers. I will label chapters from Plot 1 as Season 1 and Plot 2 as Season 2, as I've said before. If you're writing with me and you wish to exchange chapters, then send your chapter with written permission to WritewithMykela@gmail.com. I will post the email address at the end of the video as well. Please do not send Google Docs. Excuse me. I'm looking forward to reading your chapters, even if I can't read them all on the channel. All chapters read on Fridays, whether they are mine or another writer's work, are copyright protected material, and no one may use any part in writing their own stories. This story is also PG-13, so if you're under 13 years of age, you need parental guidance. This story is in its rough draft stage, just as the last story we heard. The title of the story is Tajiia, and today we are reading Chapter 9. If you would like to read along, then send to the email I stated above and request a PDF of the chapter. Make sure you are specific about either City of the Ancients or Tajiia and which chapter. Now, before we start today, I want to confirm for you that I made the change for the name Mykela to Akel. Before I spelled it Aquella, and now it is just Aquel. If you use Microsoft Word, then this change is easy. Just Control F, think Control Find. A whole section comes up on the left side of your screen, and in the top of that section there's a search bar. I actually want to replace, and for some reason Control R doesn't seem to work, so I use Control F. Then I look for that tiny little bitty arrow. This is a tiny arrow. It's so small, but it's right there, and it's in that search bar. It's on the right side. You have the search bar, and then right at the side you have the little the spyglass thing, and then right beside it is the arrow. If you press the arrow, then a box opens up with the dialogue Find with a search bar, and right under Replace with the Replace bar. And you type in what you have in the search in the Find part, and what you want in the Replace. So that's what I did. I opened that up. I replaced it. So Word replaced 90 Akelas, or Akella, 90 of those, with Akel. Nice and easy. Now I don't have to try to read through the document to make sure that I got every single one of them. It's done. It's just nice and easy. Find, replace. And if I don't know how to get to the replace other than Control Find and then find that little bitty drop down arrow. Okay, so that's that. And I told you before, you can change a lot of different things. You have to be careful, like if you want to change like something like THE, you know, to something, because THE might be in other words, like in whether it's in the end of that word or something, you know. So you might want to make sure it can't be a word part. Then you might have to click next and next and next and then approve each replacement. But Akella was not in a different word, so I was safe there. Now let's start Tajiia Chapter 9, Another Ride. After they sat on the ground for a while and nibbled a few Russians, Tajiia called Balak over. "I need more help," she said. Balak looked at Varant, and Varant nodded once. Tajiia watched the exchange. "Why did you ask permission?" "I," started Balak. "It wasn't really permission," started Varant. "We teach our mentees to discuss things with us first, because sometimes questions don't sound like questions. He doesn't feel accustomed to having another mentor ask him to try something. Oh, so No, Tajiia. You ask what you want, stated Varant, as he glanced at Artur and remembered the rule that wasn't true of 3 to 5 word spells. Tajiia took in a breath. Well, he helped me the other day, so I wanted more help. The concept of being a mentor or viewed as a mentor wasn't really sinking in. Ask any of us, stated Merc. Tajiia got up and made the wall like before. You want me on the other side? Asked Bollock, as he was thinking that was much easier than casting the invisibility spell she asked him to do yesterday. For now, stated Tajiia. She motioned to Telka and Tola. They will let you know when to come back. Can I get in the wall again? Asked Merc, as he tried to display Bollock's enthusiasm, because he sensed that was why Tajiia was asking Bollock to help. Not yet, replied Tajiia. Bollock took off to the other side, and Tajiia motioned Tola and Telka to the 2 sides of the wall. Tajiia walked to near the center on this side. Then she backed up, and she could still see Bollock. She motioned for Bollock to back up. Telka called to Bollock. She wants you to back up. Bollock did. Artur was up and gazing. Oh, this will throw off our gauge of distance. But we could see them much farther out. Okay, hold this and let me go look at how far Bollock backed up. Tajiia just looked at Artur but didn't say anything. Artur hurried up to look how far Bollock was. He tapped Tola on the shoulder. Go ask if we could have a color indicator, and then I'll get Bollock to back up more. Tola trotted off and passed the message to Tajiia. I was trying things, Tajiia huffed. Tell him color messes with the image. But Bollock was backing up, and Tajiia adjusted the image and had the edge of the wall tinged green on this side. Tharkek and Reisler were walking over to Artur. They realized what he was thinking. Artur motioned to Tajiia, but Tajiia didn't really understand. Tola hadn't left. Artur wants to know if Bollock can back up more, she said. Tajiia barely nodded. Artur motioned Bollock back. To the people sitting, Bollock looked the same size, but the edge changed now to a tinge of red. Akel whispered to Ashwaya, What's going on? Ashwaya took in a breath. Perhaps it is my turn to tell a story. Ashwaya told Akel of Tajiia Tajiia coming to the tree and taking her initial test and leading a group and rescuing. Okay, Tajiia, shouted Artur. What did you want to do? Tajiia motioned with her hands opposite each other in a circle, and then she rotated them around. Telka shouted to Bollock to come closer and then to rotate to the other side. Artur wasn't sure what Tajiia was doing, but he positioned himself closer to the center and watched the wall as Bollock rotated to his side and Tajiia rotated to the other. Once Tajiia was on the other side, no one could see her. Several in the camp raised up. Artur glanced back at them, and then he headed around to Tajia's side. When he saw the entire group, and he knew they couldn't see him, he was amazed and alarmed. He looked behind himself. Tajiia motioned to Tola, who was back at the edge. Tola turned to Merc. I think she wants you to enter the wall. Bollock was asking Varant why he couldn't see Tajiia when he could see Ozzy last time. Varant was shrugging his shoulders and shaking his head. Merc came around and poked the wall with a stick again, and the wall pulled him into it. Can he see the group? Tajiia asked. Artur walked to the other side where Merc faced, but Merc wasn't acting like he could see anything. Tajiia came around, and then Merc looked straight at Artur. Tajiia reversed the spell. Artur asked Merc, when Tajiia was on the other side of the wall, could you see me or the group? No, it was like there were no lights. And then the lights came on, stated Merc. That's a problem, stated Tajiia. I need to know how the trees know us and not the soldiers. But then someone said or thought that the trees would know the wizards from the castle. Tajiia walked away and went to sit down. Leave her alone for now, stated Artur. I interfered a little, but she is working on something. What exactly did she do? Asked Bollock. You look the same size, stated Telka, even when you backed up far away. We use the air walls in the mountains when we're being pursued, started Artur. And many times the enemies are way too close when we see them. That's true, agreed Tharkek. So when she had you move back and I could still see you, I was intrigued, stated Artur. Then I immediately noticed that you didn't look smaller. Just keep helping her, Varent said to Bollock. Maybe you don't know what benefit she is getting, but it will help us all. She said she got a lot of benefit from you walking into the wall, stated Tharkek. Somehow she knew when a soldier patrolling the prisons walked into her wall, and she said to tell you thank you. Bollock smiled. He decided that she wasn't laughing at him when he had the water all over him. Others were. But Tajiia was getting ideas against the soldiers, just like she said. Then suddenly he got an idea and he ran to Tajiia. Tajiia, what if I touch the wall and the wall makes me small? He called to her. That would scare the soldiers. Tajiia looked up. I will consider that, but I will only do that if we are okay with the soldiers knowing that we can become small. Oh, said Bollock. Why would we care? He paused. Oh, I see, said Bollock. I wasn't trying to step out of line. Ideas are always great, stated Tajiia. Actions should only be taken after considering repercussions or consequences. Then Tajiia said, Are those human words? I understood them, stated Bollock, so probably they are human words. Tajiia nodded, and then Bollock walked away. The rest of the evening was uneventful. In the morning, Tajiia saw a flock of geese flying overhead, as she thought with them to fly her north. At first the geese thought no, because they needed to fly south, but they were worried about a goose they had left behind. They had left 2 other geese with the injured goose, but they wondered if Tajiia could help their friend. Tajiia didn't promise help, but thought she would try. Everyone started waking up and rolling to their side as the geese started landing around them. Artur just shook his head to himself as everyone shrunk down and Tajiia tied them on. Waggler hadn't awakened yet, and he started fighting the tie. But the person riding with him started shouting to him to stop fighting. Finally, he woke up. The ride was over 4 hours, and Tajiia was thinking with the goose to see how much longer, because she didn't want the last grains to drop for the spell. The goose thought, not much longer. Tajiia thought about just re-saying the spell, but then she felt the geese start to fly lower. The group saw a pond, and on the far side was a tree. After they were off the geese and normal size, Tajiia went over to the injured goose. The 2 geese with him thought how he wasn't doing any better and was not moving. As Tajiia moved closer, the geese started honking loudly. She thought, It's okay. Just let me look at you. She stroked his head until he was calmer. Then she moved over to look at the awkward-looking wing. As soon as she barely touched the wing, the goose screamed out in pain. The group watched as she continued. For several minutes, her hand hovered over the wing as she moved in slow circles. No one heard a spell, but they knew she was saying at least one. Tajiia turned to the lead goose and thought, He has a broken wing. I have to reposition it. It will be very painful, but I must do it. The lead goose thought to go ahead, and then thought with the injured goose to try to hang on. Tajiia closed her eyes for a few minutes. She hated doing this. She gently grabbed the two sections of the wing and quickly moved the bones to where they were supposed to be. The goose hollered loudly as it honked in pain. It wanted to peck Tajiia, but the lead goose put its neck in the way. Tajiia called Ozzy over and told her to gently hold the wing in place against the body. Then Tajiia found a long strip of cloth. Before she started wrapping, she asked Bollock to hold the other wing out of the way. Varant came over and said, "I'll hold the other wing out and you help wrap." Tajiia wrapped the injured wing against the body and thought with the lead goose that the wrapping shouldn't come off for 2 or 3 weeks. The lead goose thought with the injured goose. The injured goose said it felt much better already, but it was still in pain. One of the geese that had stayed with the injured goose brought over a small fish, and the injured goose finally ate. Telka offered her water sack, and the injured goose drank water. The lead goose thought with Tajiia and said the goose would not be able to fly, so they would still need to leave it behind. Tajiia thought soldiers were coming on the fields, and they would eat the goose. And then she thought that she liked to eat goose too, but she wouldn't eat the injured goose, at least until he was well. The lead goose asked if the goose could stay with her group along with his 2 mates. Tajiia thought that was fine. Everyone filled their water sacks while the geese flew off and resumed their southern track. Tajiia shrank the 3 geese, and people volunteered to take turns to carry them, just like they had been carrying the squirrel and the rabbit, as they continued north. They were careful not to press on the broken wing. Before Tajiia made them invisible, Ator looked around and tried to gauge the condition of the group. He shook his head to himself when he looked at the animals. He had never had a group with animals in it before. But Tajiia talked to the animals, maybe even more than she did to the group. And the animals had helped them in important ways. The rabbit helped hide them from the dogs. At that thought, several stories from the others passed through his mind, and he knew Tajiia's original group had not fully known their fortune that day. Then the flock of geese had flown them several hours, which helped in several ways. One, of course, was the obvious of saving them walking time, but the second was to have their scent disappear from the spot where Tajiia had tied them to the geese. The dogs could not follow their scent anymore. Then Artur thought of the squirrel. What benefit did the squirrel bring? The squirrel helped them decide to go back for Tajiia. Artur doubted that the soldiers would have captured Tajiia, or at least not held her for long. But because of the squirrel's insistence, they had Tajiia with them. And that was important. After they walked invisibly a while, Tajiia decided that she wanted to read as they walked. Since no one was holding on to her cloak or hand, she could once again place an air wall or invisibility bubble over herself. Then she got out a couple books and read titles. She shuffled through the books and pulled out more. As she did this, she felt people push up against her bubble. So she moved over and then over until finally she was behind the group. She trailed after them and read. Excuse me. After walking over 4 hours, Artur said, Tajiia, let's stop and take account of everyone. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then suddenly, everyone became visible. Artur, Wykarlt, Arshwea, Darkek, and Raisler looked around and started their counts. Then in unison with several others, they said, I don't see Tajiia. Akel started to panic, and she looked frantically among all the faces again. The squirrel ran in a few circles on the ground after he jumped off his shoulder. Artur smiled and squatted down. Well, little friend, what do you know? Several in the circle received the squirrel's thoughts. Tajiia made me get down. She was just reading, so I didn't understand, but I had to get down. Artur chuckled. But you found another ride, and you are welcome among us. Where is Tajiia now? She trailed behind. I had to run to catch up. Artur put his fist on the ground and indicated for the squirrel to climb his arm. After the squirrel was on his shoulder, he said, Well, it's time for us to practice our magic. Tajiia will catch up. Many in the group didn't like that answer, but started a kill. What if Shwaya took her hand? Dear, I have all the same fears. And at the same time, I think she is fine. We must continue. We still have several days of walking. The group had divided into little clusters, and they walked in their cluster. After the group proceeded a few seconds, Artur said, Don't forget, we need invisibility. A warlock raised his hand and said the spell, so they walked on in invisibility for 5 minutes. And then someone else took a turn. Okay, writers, that's the end of chapter 9. It wasn't a long chapter, but now the dogs won't be able to follow their scent to the mountains. If you were with me on Tuesdays, then you know we talked about personification. In this chapter, the injured goose screamed out in pain. That is personification. Now, as I read through this with you, I realized that the soldiers in the woods would realize they weren't seeing the witch community. And they would do something. They would gather back and go to the villages and discuss things. They would gather on the road. They would do something. They wouldn't just be running around the woods, seeing each other and not seeing witches and just keep doing that. They would do something. So I will add in a scene with them. Maybe in this chapter, we could hear even Mr. Dwandles declare that the witches and warlocks had escaped the soldiers. But I'm not sure. Still, I need to address this issue at some point. Leave a comment below on if you would feel safer after riding the goose or a goose because the dog couldn't follow your tracks. Or leave a comment on if you would take Bollock's idea and make the soldiers small when they walk through an air wall. And join me Tuesday. We will discuss introverts and extroverts. Join me Friday for Chapter 10 of Tajiia Ch. In between video days, visit my website, WritewithMykela.com, and read character bios. You could meet Savita and Vita from Miacha 1. One is a contestant in Prince Jarul's contest, and one is a dragon. I've added some bios at least since the last script. Actually, I sent them in, but it took my team a while to upload them. And the last I heard, they were still in the stage of quality control assurance kind of thing. So, but I think they're up. I'm still trying to figure out which story I will read for season 3, so that can be ready for you when it is time. I was thinking about Eleni, and a friend has suggested that one, but I'm not sure. I started writing that story in 2019 during November and NANO WRIMO. And I continued that story after NANO WRIMO ended. And we will talk more about NANO WRIMO in another video, because I do want you to join NANO WRIMO in November. It's free. It's just a motivational thing to write a certain number of words. And we'll get into that in another video. And then suddenly, I was writing on this story, and it was too large. Because I know that my genre is supposed to be like between 80,000 and 120,000 words. And this was like 150,000 words. So, I just chopped it in half. But now I have to make sure each half has a good climax. And I'm not sure how many words until the story is complete. Because I might need book 3. Tajiia, right now, and that's the one we're reading now, Tajiia only has 19 chapters. So we have 10 more to read, because I read chapter 9 today. I'm not sure I can have Eleni finished to read in 10 weeks. Before I started the channel, when I was just writing scripts, I didn't think about what I would do with the channel after City of the Ancients. I just thought, okay, that story was something I shared with my kids. It's not an important story. I haven't spent a lot of time on that story. I was just writing some and reading my kids' stories. And then, so that one wasn't so important and it hasn't received a lot of time. So I was just like, oh, okay, I'll just read that. Then I started doing the channel and I only had 20 chapters, and I was just like, oh, what am I going to do? But I'm having fun, and I'm glad I started the channel. I hope you're enjoying writing your stories as much as I am. Don't forget to share your stories by sending them to WritewithMykela@gmail.com. That's the chapter exchange part, when you share your chapters with me. And I guess I will have to pull out plots for Eleanie's 2 books or 3 books if we decide to do that one. That's kind of a hard thing for me to pull out. It's not to pull out the plot, because I know what the plot is. I know all the interrelated things that are happening. But I need to pull out a general plot or a bare bones plot. Something that you can write along with. So that gets a little difficult for me. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe and the bell notification so we can continue to write together. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate your participation. If you know someone who would like this video, then please share it with them. This is Mykela with Write with Mykela. Bye for now.